Growing up, I always knew there were unspoken rules in my family. My siblings, Joseph and Katrina, were given everything: praise, lavish gifts, surprise parties, and me? I got body wash for my birthday. Again. 2 days ago, it happened for the umpteenth time, and now, as I sit here reflecting, I realize this was the moment that broke me. I am a 25-year-old woman, still living at home with my parents. I've always been the responsible one, the pillar holding the family together. Yet somehow, despite all the sacrifices I've made, my worth has been reduced to a bottle of body wash. Let me explain how it all began. I am the oldest of three, and that meant being the first to step up when times got tough. My father worked, but there were always periods when he struggled to make ends meet. My mother? She either claimed to be too sick or too exhausted to work. Over time, I saw through it. Her illness seemed more like an excuse, a means to sit on the couch all day, watch soap operas, and binge on snacks. I tried to motivate her in the early days, but after years of failed attempts, I stopped trying. When my brother and sister finished school, I thought things would get better. They both found jobs, albeit short-lived. Joseph turned out to be a thief, quite literally, getting caught up in petty crimes that ruined any chance of stability. Katrina, on the other hand, couldn't hold a job, blaming her fragile mental state whenever things got tough. The temporary relief their income provided quickly vanished, and once again, the burden fell on me. I had to pick up extra shifts just to keep us afloat. 70% of my income goes straight to household expenses, and the remaining 30% barely covers my own needs. Anytime I manage to save a bit, some last-minute crisis sucks it away. It's exhausting. I work long hours, sometimes double shifts, just to keep the lights on, and when I finally make it home, my real job begins. I clean, I do laundry, I shop for groceries, I handle the bills. No one lifts a finger to help. My mother lounges on the couch, still glued to her TV dramas. Katrina isolates herself in her room until it's time to party with her friends. My father and brother? They cling to old-school gender norms where chores are women's work. I once tried standing up for myself, but my mother's response was simple. If you do not like it, find your own place. She knew I couldn't afford to leave while still supporting the family, and worse, she believed I was too soft-hearted to abandon them. For years, I tolerated this treatment, convincing myself that deep down, they appreciated me. But this birthday was the breaking point. 2 days ago, I was handed a cheap bottle of body wash as my birthday gift. Meanwhile, just last month, we threw a surprise party for Katrina, a party we couldn't even afford. My father insisted he could cover the costs, but after the festivities, he came to me with a sob story. He had miscalculated the expenses and borrowed money from some dangerous people. Of course, I had to bail him out by working even more hours. And now, after all that effort, all I get is body wash? It is not even about the gift itself. It is about the blatant favoritism. Joseph got a brand new gaming console for his birthday. Katrina was gifted a luxury spa certificate. And me? I'm the workhorse. The afterthought. How can they justify this? When I confronted them, my father had the audacity to scold me for being disrespectful. He told me to understand their financial struggles. I laughed bitterly. How could he say that with a straight face after bankrupting himself for Katrina's party? Was I supposed to be grateful for the $20 they spent on me? That night, I snapped. For the first time, I asked if I was adopted because surely that would explain why they treat me like an outsider. My mother started crying, accusing me of being dramatic. I hate it when you have these little outbursts, she said. Outbursts? I have spent my entire life swallowing my emotions, suppressing my frustrations, and carrying this family on my back. But when I finally express how I feel, I am called disrespectful and over the top. Meanwhile, my mother cycles through 100 different moods daily, and we are expected to cater to her every whim. I stormed off to my room and ignored their calls. I sat there for hours, fuming, unable to sleep. I kept replaying the events in my mind, feeling this deep, gnawing sadness. Most people my age are living their lives, buying cars, getting married, purchasing homes. I see them at work, younger colleagues who make less than I do, but are miles ahead in life. I feel stuck. Despite my career success, I am trapped in this cycle of servitude, with no identity outside of being the family caretaker. This birthday incident forced me to confront the truth. I have let them take advantage of me for far too long. I thought they valued me, but now I see things clearly. They do not. I am tired of being the invisible support system, the one who sacrifices everything without recognition. Something has to change. I do not want to live like this anymore. I need to find a way to reclaim my life and discover my own purpose. Because if I do not, I am afraid this sadness will consume me. I did it! I finally moved out 2 months after my original post. Can you believe it? Just 2 months after the birthday incident, I managed to make it happen. My apartment is small and pretty basic. There's not much furniture besides the essentials, but it is all mine. For the first time in my life, I have a space that is entirely my own. It feels surreal. Do you want to know the very first thing I did after moving all my stuff in? I lay down in my bed and just stayed there for hours. No phone calls, no one yelling for me to fix some minor household issue, no sudden demands, just peace. It was such a strange and liberating experience. I had no idea that lying in bed could feel so cathartic, so healing. For once, I was able to just exist in my own little bubble without anyone trying to burst it. You are probably wondering how I managed to pull this off, especially with my controlling family constantly breathing down my neck. Let me tell you, it was not easy. There were countless moments where I felt like giving up, but I stuck to my plan. The first step was setting boundaries, something they were definitely not happy about. I stopped paying for things that were not my responsibility. Instead, I contributed the bare minimum toward household bills and quietly stashed away the rest of my earnings. I also started taking extra shifts at work to boost my savings. Of course, my parents got suspicious and started asking questions about where my money was going. I knew I had to play it smart, so I told them it was all being held back as part of my year-end bonus. It was a gamble, but they bought it. I kept my head down and worked relentlessly until I finally had enough saved for a deposit on my new place. The moment I signed the lease, I knew I was done. I was ready to break free. I sat my parents down and told them straight up that I was moving out. As you can imagine, the conversation did not go well. They were furious and demanded to know why I felt the need to leave. Is it really that bad living with us? They asked. I tried to be diplomatic and told them it was not about them, it was about me. I was getting older and needed to gain independence. I explained that I could not do that while living under their roof. I even reminded my mom that she had always said I should get my own apartment one day. Of course, that did not go over well. She took offense, accused me of being rude, and said I was mocking her. I only want what's best for you, she insisted. I knew there was no point in arguing. There never is with her. So I apologized, kept the peace, and moved on. At that point, they knew they could not stop me. The lease was already signed, and my mind was made up. But they were still bitter about it. In a passive-aggressive display of protest, none of my family members offered to help me pack. Not one. I had to reach out to a couple of my coworkers instead. Janet and Lisa, who work in different departments, had been the only people at work who knew about the situation at home. When I told them I was moving out, they were overjoyed for me. They practically jumped up and down, saying how proud they were that I was finally taking this step. When I asked if they could help me with the move, they did not even hesitate. They both showed up on moving day with big smiles and even bigger energy. We spent hours lugging boxes and furniture, making trip after trip. It was exhausting, but with their help, I got everything done. A few days later, here I am, officially settled in my new place. Well, settled might be a stretch since the apartment is still practically empty, but honestly, I do not care. I do not have much, but I am happy. For the first time, I feel like I can breathe. I can make my own decisions without someone constantly looking over my shoulder. I cannot wait to start this new chapter of my life, living on my own, making my own rules, and finally having the freedom I have always dreamed of. This is just the beginning, and I'm excited to see where it takes me. I have been living in my apartment for just over a month now. To say it has been a whirlwind would be an understatement. It has been a challenging few weeks adjusting to this new life and space, but for the most part, I have been happier than I have been in a long time. At least, I was until a few hours ago. Let me backtrack a bit and bring you up to speed. Over the past month, I have been slowly making this flat feel like home. I spent a lot of time, and maybe more money than I should have, on furniture, decorations, and all the little things that make a place feel personal. I even threw a housewarming party. It was a surreal moment, standing there, surrounded by friends in a place that was fully mine. For once, I was not sharing a space with anyone who made me feel small or trapped. Now that I actually have my evenings free, I have been going out more, catching up with friends, and even meeting new people through them. It is amazing how much your social life can improve when you are not constantly dealing with someone else's emergencies. For the first time in what feels like forever, I am living for myself. I never had that luxury before. Between family crises and obligations, I never had the time or energy to put myself first. And guess what? I am even dating someone now. Lisa, one of my friends, introduced me to this person, and things have been going well so far. It is still early days, but just the fact that I am putting myself out there feels like a major win. In the past, dating felt impossible because every time I tried, something would happen. My family would call with some last-minute drama, demanding my time, my money, or both. It was a never-ending cycle. But now that I live farther away, they cannot just show up at my door or pull me into their problems. Speaking of family, I know you are probably wondering how things have been with them since I moved out. Here's the strange part. They have not contacted me at all. Not a single message, phone call, or passive-aggressive guilt trip disguised as checking in. Honestly, their silence was unnerving at first. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. After all, it is not like them to stay quiet for this long. I thought about reaching out once or twice, but every time I picked up my phone, I stopped myself. Why should I always be the one to break the ice? For years, I have been the one apologizing after every fight, bending over backward to make peace. Not this time. I told myself I deserve to be treated with respect, just like any other family member. If they want to talk to me, they can make the effort. For a while, I started to believe that our relationship might have quietly ended. That was until this afternoon when my mother called me out of nowhere while I was at work. Seeing her name on my screen genuinely shocked me. I almost did not answer, but I did. "Where's the check?" Those were the first words out of her mouth. No greeting, no, "How are you?" or "We miss you," just straight to business. At first, I was confused. I asked her what check she was talking about. That is when it hit me. She must have forgotten that I am not living with them anymore. I could almost hear her annoyance through the phone. She went on to ask how they were supposed to function without my financial help. I told her exactly what I had been holding back for years, that she has 2 other able-bodied children who are perfectly capable of contributing. They have had a whole month to get their lives together. What have they been doing this entire time? She responded by accusing me of being heartless and not caring about my siblings' struggles. That is when I snapped. I told her that I cannot feel sorry for people who have repeatedly sabotaged their own opportunities. They have to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, just like I did. I told her I would not be sending any more money and that it was time for them to make their own plans. Then I hung up. She tried calling me back several times, but I ignored her. Later, my father called, and when he started lecturing me, I hung up on him too. I could not believe what I had done. Never in my life had I hung up on my parents. But you know what? It felt liberating. The peace I have experienced over the last month was too valuable to give up. Talking to them again reminded me just how chaotic my life used to be. I do not want to go back to that. I wish they had stayed silent. Honestly, it would have been better if they had cut me off completely. I have come to realize that I was never really part of the family in the way that I thought I was. They only valued me for what I could provide. I spent years living an unsustainable lifestyle, constantly sacrificing my well-being for theirs. But I am done with that now. I have reached my breaking point. It is time to focus on myself and build the life I want. I should have done this a long time ago. They have tried to guilt trip me, but it is not working anymore. I think I have finally become immune to it. For once, I am truly free. Alright, I do not even know where to begin because my family just crossed every line imaginable. Honestly, I am struggling to understand how I am related to people who behave like this. Sure, I have always known they had a knack for being dramatic and could push boundaries to get what they wanted, but this is on a whole different level of insanity. My patience? Gone. Completely obliterated. They are about to see a side of me they never knew existed because I am officially done playing nice. Here is some context. For 2 days straight, my relatives have been hounding me for money. Not just a casual, "Hey, could you help out?" No, I am talking about aggressive demands, guilt trips, and constant badgering. I have told them again and again, I am not their personal bank. They need to figure out their own financial issues. I have my own bills and responsibilities. I mean, how do they expect me to fund their lives when I am already working hard to maintain my own? The entitlement is absurd. So I ignored them. For 24 hours, I turned off notifications and focused on something positive, decorating my flat. You would not believe how excited I am about this place finally coming together. New furniture, new vibe, it is finally starting to feel like a real home. I was genuinely proud of myself, but of course, I could not enjoy it for long because my family has the uncanny ability to ruin every good moment in my life. Friday night rolls around and I am planning a chill evening at home. A few friends, Lisa and Janet, suggested we do a book and wine night instead of going out since we were all feeling pretty tired. 2 more friends joined us, and we were having a blast. Good wine, good conversation. It was exactly the low-key vibe I needed after all the stress. Then, just as things were getting comfortable, there was a disturbance outside. Now, my apartment complex is usually peaceful. We do not get random noise or drama, so when we heard loud voices, we all kind of froze for a moment. At first, we tried to ignore it, thinking it was probably just someone having a minor issue. But the noise kept escalating. Before we knew it, it was right outside my door. When I opened the door, I was met with the surreal sight of my sister, father, and brother arguing with the building manager. They were demanding to be let inside because we are family. I stood there, speechless for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. I finally snapped out of it and told the manager I knew them, but they were absolutely not welcome. My father gave me this wounded look like I had just betrayed him. He said they just wanted to talk. I looked at the time, 10 p.m., and reminded them that normal people do not just show up unannounced at that hour. Also, how on earth did they even find out where I lived? That is when my sister proudly announced that a friend of hers had spotted me at the complex. She then had the audacity to glance around and comment that I was living large. She even asked why she could not move in with me. Move in? I stared at her like she had lost her mind. Why would I want to live with someone who cannot even take care of herself? I would have to play maid and nanny for her, and there is no way I am doing that. I told them they needed to leave. This was not the time or place for whatever nonsense they had planned, but my father refused. He said they were not going anywhere until I agreed to speak with them. I pointed out again that I had guests and no interest in talking. That is when my brother lost it. He started yelling at the top of his lungs, calling me a selfish and useless sister. He barged into my flat like he owned the place and began verbally assaulting me. My sister and father joined in, and suddenly, it felt like I was under siege in my own home. My friends sat there, stunned and horrified, watching this circus unfold. Things escalated quickly. My brother and father started rifling through my belongings, throwing things around like they were on a scavenger hunt. I yelled at them to stop, but they ignored me. They accused me of being heartless and demanded that I write them a check on the spot. It was a nightmare. I felt humiliated, powerless, and enraged all at once. Thank God for Janet. While all this chaos was happening, she quietly slipped out to contact building security. When the guards arrived, my father and brother refused to leave. They even tried to argue with security, which only made things worse. The commotion got so bad that the police had to be called. And guess what? My father and brother are now sitting in jail for trespassing and disturbing the peace. They will not be released until Monday. I have already filed charges against them. I am taking them to court because enough is enough. This is the breaking point. They have gone too far, and I am not going to let them continue dragging me down with their drama. This time, there are consequences. They are finally going to learn that I am not someone they can manipulate or walk all over. This is the end of their games. I am done. It has been 4 months since my last post, and I know many of you were expecting an update much sooner. Truthfully, I wanted to share something earlier, but I decided to wait until everything was fully settled. Well, now that the trial is over and the dust has finally cleared, I can tell you all the details. I think a lot of you will feel relieved knowing that my family has faced the consequences they deserve. Let's start with my brother. The judge came down hard on him, and honestly, I was not surprised. He has a history of trouble with the law, shoplifting, petty theft, you name it. Being a repeat offender did not do him any favors in court. The final verdict? 1 year in prison. Unfortunately for him, this charge will stay on his record permanently. That means any shot he had at building a stable future for himself is pretty much gone. It is going to be tough for him to find decent work or even maintain any kind of normal life after this. Then again, knowing how my brother has been living up to this point, he was not exactly headed towards success anyway. Maybe, just maybe, this time behind bars will force him to reflect on his choices and finally get his act together. I can only hope. I have seen people far younger than him with more structure and ambition in their lives than he ever showed. As for my father, the court gave him a hefty fine to pay and placed him on probation. Right now, even a minor infraction, like a traffic ticket, could land him in jail. He needs to be on his best behavior for the foreseeable future. Both the judge and the city authorities made it crystal clear that they are not messing around. They take these offenses seriously, and my father learned that the hard way. If he slips up even once, he is going to face serious consequences. Now, let's talk about my mother. Her situation is a whole different kind of disaster. Years of unhealthy living, overeating, refusing to exercise, and just general laziness have finally caught up with her. She is now at high risk for heart disease, and according to the doctors, her condition is deteriorating at an alarming rate. If she does not make some major lifestyle changes, they estimate she has less than 2 years left. But knowing my mother, she probably does not care. She has always been the type to think she is invincible, like she will somehow live forever despite all the warning signs. I spent years trying to get her to eat better and take care of herself, but she never listened. Eventually, I gave up. Now I am watching her face the consequences of those choices. If her high cholesterol does not kill her first, The stress my sister is causing might do the job. Speaking of my sister, Katrina has been the center of gossip lately, and not for any good reasons. With money running out and nobody willing to fund her lifestyle anymore, she decided to take matters into her own hands. Unfortunately, that meant getting involved with the wrong crowd. Somehow, she got mixed up with a group of girls who have a reputation for doing some questionable and illegal things. Let's just say they are known for selling certain products on the street. It is a dangerous and reckless path, and from what I heard, she was recently detained for doing something sketchy. I would not be surprised if she ends up in an even worse situation soon, something that could seriously put her life at risk. People have asked me to reach out to her and try to help, but at this point, what can I do? She chose this life. Honestly, she probably thinks I am a fool for working an honest job. No offense to anyone in her line of work, but I have seen what some of those girls go through. There are no happy endings for people who take that path, only substance abuse, more jail time, and constant danger. The whole situation with Katrina has been taking a toll on my parents, especially my mother. She has been collapsing under the stress, both physically and emotionally. Despite all of this, Katrina still lives with our parents. They continue to enable her behavior by letting her stay there, which only worsens things. Even though she is making money now, she is not spending it wisely. She is not helping with bills or paying off any debts. You might be wondering how I know all of this. Well, a reliable source told me that my parents have had to resort to using food stamps. On top of that, my father's work hours were cut, and now he spends most of his time at home with my mother and Katrina. I can only imagine how miserable things must be in that house. They are barely getting by, and on top of everything else, they still owe money for the damages they caused to my apartment. I managed to recover some of the items they destroyed, but they still have to pay the court-ordered compensation. Do I feel bad for them? I guess, in a way I do, but not enough to intervene and offer any help. They made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. That is just how life works. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you realize the gravity of your mistakes. I am just glad I finally have some closure on this chapter. I have more details on the ongoing chaos surrounding my family. Honestly, things have gone from bad to worse, just as many of you predicted. My family seems to have a unique talent for self-destruction. They dig themselves into holes so deep that it is almost comical watching them try to claw their way out. But let me be clear, I am not going to be their lifeline anymore. They created this disaster, and it is up to them to face the consequences. Let's start with my father. In the last update, I mentioned how the court had ordered him and my brother to pay for the damage they caused to my apartment. Well, surprise, surprise, he did not pay a single dime. Many of you called this out, and you were absolutely right. What stings the most is that he did not even try this time. He made zero effort to show the judge that he had any intention of following the instructions given to him. It is almost like he was daring the legal system to punish him. The judge had warned that any non-compliance would land him back in prison, and that is exactly what happened. While it was not literally a sneeze that sent him back, his refusal to pay was enough. So yes, my father is back behind bars. The irony? He was supposedly the only person in that household with an actual job. Now that he is locked up, I genuinely have no idea how my mother is going to manage. The last time I heard from someone still in contact with the family, they mentioned there was barely any food left in the house. With my mother's ongoing health problems, that is genuinely concerning. Yet, despite how grim it sounds, I feel strangely numb to all of this. It is like I am standing at a distance, just observing the train wreck without any emotional attachment. For years, I was the one keeping that household afloat, financially, emotionally, in every possible way, and they took full advantage of me. Now, they are finally facing the consequences of their recklessness. And if you thought that was bad, it gets worse. My brother and sister are both in jail now. My brother has been locked up for a while, as you might remember, but my sister has recently joined him. Her so-called business venture, which everyone but her knew was doomed from the start, ended predictably. She was arrested, and from what I heard, she did not just get caught selling, but had also started using. That left her in an even more vulnerable state, clouding her judgment. An undercover detective caught her red-handed, and that was the end of her little operation. Now, she is awaiting trial, and honestly, I do not see her getting out of this unscathed. The problem is she cannot afford a decent lawyer. She is stuck with a public defender, which, let's be real, does not exactly inspire confidence. I'm not trying to be cruel, but I think her chances are slim at best. Meanwhile, my mother is left in a near-empty house that once held 5 people. My father is in prison, my brother is already serving time, and my sister is now awaiting trial. The place is eerily quiet, and the saddest part is that she has no one to help her. For years, she depended on others to provide her with money and food. Now, with her deteriorating health, she can barely leave the house. I do not know how she will survive. Sure, they get some assistance through food stamps, but everyone knows that is not enough to live on. So, here we are. My family has completely fallen apart. There is nothing left of the life they once had. As for me, I have finally found peace. And while it may sound harsh to say this, I do not regret distancing myself from the mess they created. I gave them more chances than they ever deserved. And now I can live my life without the constant weight of their problems dragging me down. The situation is spiraling, but at least it's no longer my disaster to handle. It's my family's problem now. I hate being the one to relay this mess, but honestly, I feel a strange mix of horror and relief. Everything seems to be playing out in slow motion, like watching a train crash that you narrowly avoided boarding. It is awful, sure, but there is some comfort in knowing I am not caught in the wreckage anymore. First, and perhaps the most relieving part of this nightmare, I finally got my money back. I won't lie, it was an absolute ordeal. My father, as I predicted, did not have the means to pay me. That man had managed to dig himself into such a deep pit that the only reason I got my money at all was because my mother had to take out a loan. And why? To bail him out of jail where he had been sitting for contempt of court? Yes, my father was locked up, adding yet another chaotic layer to this disaster. My mom, in her endless desperation to fix his problems, eventually secured the money after jumping through who knows how many hoops. I am not even sure if she fully grasped what she was doing or if she just wanted to get him out of there as soon as possible. Either way, the result is that he's out of jail, which I suppose counts as a silver lining, though that might be giving it too much credit. During all of this legal drama, my mother moved in with a relative to focus entirely on resolving my father's situation. She left the house, our family home, unattended for what ended up being a much longer period than expected. Now, let me clarify. Our neighborhood was never great, not even close. You do not just leave a house empty around there and expect everything to be fine. And surprise, surprise, everything was not fine. I have since learned that the house was vandalized and looted beyond recognition. Windows shattered, doors broken down, appliances gone, everything ransacked. To make matters worse, the house is apparently now being squatted in. From what I have been told, the people living there may even be former clients of my sister. Yeah, those kinds of clients. This is not just a case of a few squatters sneaking in and causing trouble. It is a full-blown occupation of what used to be our home, even if my parents somehow managed to evict them. And let's be honest, that is going to be a bureaucratic nightmare. I doubt much of the house is salvageable at this point. It's devastating to think about. I put so much effort into maintaining that place back when I lived there, making it as livable as I could. Now to hear that it has been reduced to this, it stings. But I remind myself that it is no longer my home. The house is not in my name, and I have no legal responsibility to deal with the fallout. That burden lies squarely on my parents now. Meanwhile, my siblings are still serving their sentences. There have been few updates on that front, and honestly, I have not gone out of my way to check in. It is not like they are in a position to offer help with the situation anyway. What shocks me the most is how quickly everything unraveled once I left. It is almost as if I had been the last thread barely holding this dysfunctional tapestry together. The moment I walked away, the whole thing collapsed under its own weight. Maybe I should not be surprised. Deep down, I always knew the cracks were there, hidden beneath years of unresolved issues and toxic family dynamics. Still, seeing it all crumble so spectacularly is something else. At this point, I can only watch from a distance and hope my parents can figure it out. Though honestly, part of me doubts they will.